All right, like I promised in the last video, possibly link in the iCard if I remember to stick it there. We'll excuse me. We shall see what happens. We're going to be talking about solving quadratics using factoring. This is the second part of the third lesson of the 0th unit of pre-calculus. I don't know, it's getting a little bit convoluted at this point. And it is really important that you understand factoring because it's going to be important in your college algebra class at some point. So we're going to, in this particular video, now in my algebra 2 videos that I'll release eventually and the algebra 1 videos that are already there on this topic, I go into more depth and do more examples and all those things. So again, if I somehow miraculously remember to link it in the iCard, I'll have that there so you can watch those videos. In this one, we are going to just do 2 different examples of solving by factoring, since this is going to be more review. So example number 1 is going to be x squared minus 8x plus 12 equals 0. And the instructions say solve by factoring. I know, it's a shock. By factoring. Solve by factoring. So the first step is to factor. So in case you don't remember, this is an important topic. Hopefully at this point you've at least seen this before, and so we're just dumping off cobwebs. But if not, again, got links to older videos from other courses that may help you out with that. Hopefully, this is like flipping around crazy, all these things. So the first step to factoring, and I usually teach a guess and check method. By the time you're watching this, I don't know whether I have a video on the box method or not. I don't always teach the box method in my classes, but sometimes I do. So we're going to factor this using a guess and check method. I also call it the smiley face method. The first step is to do 2 sets of parentheses. Now, in order to do this, it's worth noting that just as a reminder, hopefully, that in order to solve this by factoring, the first step, and you'll see this on the next example actually, is to get everything on one side and just 0 on the other side. So hopefully you remember this, but we want for this first lot 2 things that multiply to get this first term. Now in this first example, there are only 2 options. The only way you can get x squared by multiplying is x times x, right? That x went a little crazy, didn't it? X times x gives you x squared. Now for the last one, we have several options because there are several different possible factors of 12. To get 12, we can do 1 times 12. We can do 2 times 6. We can do 3 times 4. Of course, the other order would also work on all of these. So like 6 times 2 would also work. So those are all of our possible. Now, we are going to pick one. Now, you may or may not want to write this first one down. Hopefully, you're doing your factoring with pencil because depending on how much practice, and especially when this first number isn't 1, then you're liable to have to try this a few times. Again, I call this... this method is kind of officially called guess and check. Sorry if I was screaming at you. I obviously had my levels not quite set right. I was peeking into the red a little bit. Hopefully that's a little bit better. So I'm going to intentionally put a wrong choice on here to show you what we're checking for and how to make that work. So let's put 3 and 4. So now what we want to check is we want to draw, this is why I call it the smiley face method. We want to draw our nose and our mouth. And then we multiply the numbers on here. So 3 times 1, the number in front of the x is a 1, is 3. And then 1 times 4 is 4. Now we're trying to either add or subtract these numbers to get whatever this middle one is. Again, hopefully this is a review, but if not, that's okay. So we're trying to get a -8. So can we add or subtract this 3 and 4 to get a -8? Well, you can't, right? Because if we add them, we get, if they're both positive, we get a +7, both negative, we get a -7. And if we subtract them, we either get positive or negative 1, none of which is negative 8. So we've got to try a different set of factors. Now we're going to jump straight to the punchline on this one, and we're going to use 2 and 6. 2 and 6. So 2 times 1 is 2. 1 times 6 is 6. So we can add these if they are both negative. Because negative 2 plus negative 6 is negative 8. So then we follow our nose and put negative. We follow our mouth and put negative. So this factors into x minus 2 times x minus 6. Now, there is a theorem that says that if we have a equation that is completely factored and equal to 0, then in order to finish solving it, we can set each factor equal to 0. Just to finish this out, we split this into x minus 2 equals 0 and x minus 6 equals 0. And then we got a couple of baby equations, excuse me, that are super easy to solve at this point. So we're on this one, we're going to add 2 to both sides. This one we're going to add 6 to both sides. These cancel, leaving us with x equals 2 and x equals 6. And there's that one. Let's do one more example like this because I want to make sure and dust off any cobwebs where if that leading term isn't 1, because those are a little bit trickier. So let's do this example. This is going to be example number 2. And it is 4r squared minus r equals 5. So the instructions still say solve by factoring, just like the first ones. It's probably already on your page, and so your notes are your notes, right? So like I said, in order to solve this by factoring, the first step is to get everything on one side. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to subtract 5 on both sides to move that 5 over. So this then turns into 4r squared minus r equals 5. How about minus 5 equals 0? There we go. No problemo. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? So now we need to factor this thing, okay? So let's factor it. Parentheses, 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 parentheses. Bring down the equals 0 so we don't forget it, right? No big deal. So on this first one, we have two options. We could do 4 and 1, or we could do 2 and 2. We're going to start with the same way that most of y'all would probably start trying this. Let's try 2 and 2. See what happens. I'm not telling you whether that's the right answer or not. So this time you may have to pull out that eraser or not. Who knows? Let's see. Now 5 is great. We like prime numbers in factoring because there's only one way to split them up. So this has got to be 5 and 1, or it could be 1 and 5. Those are two different things. So now we're going to smiley face, blip, and blap. 5 times 2 is 10. 2 times 1 is 2. And we're trying to get negative 1. That doesn't work. So since one of them is prime, we're going to leave it sitting where it is. And actually, more importantly, because these are both 2s, we can't switch the order, so that doesn't help. And so let's change those 2s to 4 and 1. Okay. So let's change it up here to 4 and 1. 5 times 1 is 5. 4 times 1 is 4. So that works. That looks really great. Looks really, really great because we can take and we can make this one negative, and then negative 5 plus 4 is negative 1. Now, if we had tried it the other way around, 1 and 4, that wouldn't have worked. So sometimes when this A isn't 1, the order matters. So before changing the factors, remember that it's a good idea to change the order first. as well and see if that works out. So if you had tried it the other way around, make sure and try the order before you switch numbers. So -5 and then bring up here is +1. Now, we're just like on the last example, we're going to split that into 2. So we're going to split it into 4r minus 5 equals 0. And r, I'm just writing r because 1r is the same as r, right? R plus 1 equals 0. Now, this guy right here is a little bit more complicated. We have a 2-step equation. OMG, so wild and crazy. You can handle it, right? You're in pre-cal. So we're going to add 5 over here, add 5 on the other side. And for this little baby equation, we're going to subtract 1. And then we're going to subtract 1 over here. That cancels and that cancels. On this one, we are left with 4r. Oh, tears. You have to do another step. Equals 5. And on this one, we end up with r equals -1. That one's finished. So that's one of our answers. Now, to finish this one off, we need to divide by 4 on both sides. Okay, so we end up with r equals 5/4. If you are one of my students, now this will be different for your teacher or your professor or whoever it is, and whatever else. For my students, if you're doing an abstract problem like this where we don't have, it's not a word problem or whatever, leaving it as a reduced improper fraction is totally fine with me. So our answers to the second example is 5/4 and -1. That's all there is for that. In our next installment in 0.3c, we're going to remind you how to complete the square. We'll probably just do one example of that, and then we'll do one more of these videos for Unit 0, Lesson 3 on the quadratic formula. Thanks, guys. If you're one of my students, I'll see you in class. All the things, probably just skip right over to this video. If you're not one of my students, thanks for joining us anyway. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Have a good day. Bye-bye.